Hi friends. So I'm gonna assume that it started. I always have the hardest time with starting live streams, but I'm 90% sure it has successfully started. And today I am beginning a new show of sorts, I guess. I'm chatting with atheists from all over. And today's guest and the inaugural guest of the show is LilyCuervo Logic.
Yay! Hi, that's me.
I'm super excited for you to be able to come onto the show. I saw you be on Wonder Lady show, and I've seen a couple of your videos. You create really interesting content, especially because a lot of your videos are like longer. So that's really interesting to me because like I like creating long form content, but it's not easy and you just do it so naturally, especially because you do it on live streams, that's challenging.
Oh yeah, I don't mean to make them long, they just end up that way.
I got to finish all of the you reading Islamic fan fiction video the other day.
Oh yeah.
And
You
I
like
only
that
got to
one?
see like part one, so I haven't seen the whole thing, but it was really funny.
Oh yeah, that was a nice story. Somebody told me we should make that a series.
I agree because that like it seemed like given the super serious subject matter, like I appreciate that you and your friend, I don't know who that person was, and I wish that I did because if they have a channel, I'd love to subscribe to them. But I thought it was a really interesting video, and I appreciated that you guys were able to keep it light given the fairly serious subject matter. But for those of you
Which
who
was
don't,
like death.
yeah, it was like really scary, and I think that makes sense because I know that there's actually it's not super common, but among Catholics there are like similar like weird fan fiction-y stories, and it's disturbing that this is like a thing that people feel appropriate like making such stories about. It's strange to me.
Oh sure. I mean, when I was in Islamic private school, there was another story. I don't remember the name or whatever, but it was given to us by our English teacher as as just like a regular project that we had to read the story and I guess write a book report or essay or whatever about it, and we had to reenact like little skits from it, and they're usually pretty like graphic and ominous. The main character has to die, or her best friend is left behind, you know, in torment because she thinks that her friend's going to hell, and then she has to go through some type of transformation where she becomes more religious and a better person because she doesn't want to end up like her friend. It's a common theme.
I think it's interesting that there are actually like similar themes in Christian media. It's not surprising because both like Christian media and Islamic media have a lot of things in common, and the religions aren't super similar, but there's enough similarities that like it makes sense where it's like yeah, if there's media from one, there's definitely going to be similarities whenever you see similar media for the other. And I know that like my actual deconversion deeply involved the movie God's Not Dead, which was one of those movies where it's
Oh
like,
my gosh, I watched I think I watched it at, well, I used to work with this old elderly man client. He was Christian or whatever, but he wasn't like super in your face about it. But I think I watched it at his house. He had like the first two, and then I watched Hugo and Jake did like a atheist movie review.
mm-hmm.
They've done like all of the movies, and it was so funny to watch their review with the commentary. They're saying everything that I'm thinking in my head. And the craziest thing about God's Not Dead is that the main atheist antagonist was never a true atheist
Mm-hmm.
because, big reveal at the end, he believed in God and Jesus and all that. So he wasn't actually an atheist.
It was a lie the whole time. I was a theist.
It's like to prove, oh look, all atheists aren't actually atheists. Like they believe in God deep down. You just have to. And I guess that's why people have this, like, they're in denial that, like, God is real. Come on, like, deep down, and then they pull that deep down. No, I don't know that he's real. I don't know, Jesus. And it's always the appeal to emotion. But don't you feel like it? And it's like, well, we can't rely on our feelings to make such heavy judgments that have to do with, you know, what the path of our lives, huge like life-changing decisions just because we have a hunch.
I agree with that, but at the time, like I was so for a little bit of context for why that movie like deconverted me, I was already 9/10 of the way out of Christianity. I at that point I was like a non-denominational Christian, so I was like super chill about Christianity, and I was a believer, but I wasn't like LGBT. But I was just like, yeah, I really need something to like. I want to be more in the faith. I want to be like more religious. And I went to a thing called Winterfest or Winter Jam. That's the actual name of it. And Winter Jam is this, for those of you who don't know, whether you are someone watching now or someone who'll watch it out, who will watch this later, Winter Jam is this like really popular Christian music festival that technically goes through most of the country, but is like overwhelmingly popular in the South. And I was in college in North Carolina at the time. I went to go see it, and there was this band called New Boys there, which is like a super popular Christian rock band. They're the people who actually made the song God's Not Dead. And I think they made it for the movie, but like they were there the year the movie was coming out, and they showed like a special preview trailer, which was the first like 3 or 4 minutes of the movie. And the movie just sort of throws you into the conflict like kind of right away. You don't really get a chance to like get to know Joshua, the main character. That's also my middle name. So I'm watching that, I was like, ooh, that's me. But what ended up happening was I saw the little preview trailer and I was like, yes, this is a movie that's going to restore my faith. I went to go see it with my girlfriend at the time, and we would be together the entire time we were in college, but we were both like searching for reasons to believe because she was also Latina. I'm Puerto Rican and she was Salvadorian. And she was, like, she's not anymore. She is Salvadorian. And we went to go and see it. And by the time I left that movie, I was like, I'm an atheist. Like, watching that movie was literally the final step for me. And that's the weirdest thing. I don't think that like the New Boys would be happy knowing that their movie made me an atheist.
That's not how it was intended.
Like,
but I don't get it. Like what part of it? What was it about it that that sparked that?
So it was both the utter contempt it had for atheists. Like that was probably the biggest one because at that point I already knew that atheists were like good people and stuff. And that was like a really weird turn for me since I was raised in both Latin America and in like private religious schools. But like I was never the sort of person to like disrespect people who didn't believe what I believed. So like that definitely didn't help. But also like the movie made it really clear. It reminded me of like the Christian belief that if you aren't a Christian, you're going to go to hell. And like seeing it painted so distinctly and so painfully is just like, yeah, if I'm a Christian, that means that one of the things I have to believe, at the very least, my understanding of Christianity, which isn't everyone's, but it was mine because I was like a biblical literalist. For me, it was a really decisive thing because it's like, yeah, is this a thing that I can actually believe? And the more I questioned it, the more I realized I didn't believe it. So then when the movie like had the antagonist die at the end, I was just like, ooh, it's a good thing he's a Christian. It's also a good thing that I'm an atheist because I don't believe in this.
That's crazy. Like that movie is just so filled with cringe. And the second one, I think even more.
I've actually never seen the second one or the third one. I want to. I haven't gotten around to seeing them.
I saw the third one like in a Dollar General or something. I didn't actually watch it. I probably won't watch it.
The thing that I hate about one of them, I can't remember which one it is, but I think it's the one with the teacher, so I'm pretty sure it's the second one.
That's the second one.
One of the characters in it, I don't know how major a character she is, but she's like the actress from The Goldbergs, which is one of my favorite TV shows. And it's like, oh, it really hurts seeing someone so young absolutely murder their acting career so early.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, you see people that you recognize, and like Melissa Joan Hart, she turned like super Christian now.
Yeah. It's so sad.
It's so ironic because I went back and I rewatched like all the old Sabrina the Teenage Witches on Amazon Prime, and it's so like occulty and low-key demonic, and maybe that in a way caused her to go like way far on the other end of the spectrum. because maybe she got like a lot of fan mail telling her she's going to hell and she needs to find Jesus.
I think it's really interesting, like seeing the sorts of experiences that people have depending on like two major things. Like for atheists who were deconverts like us, like there are very interesting experiences where we talk about like the religion of our birth or our families. And then like also there's people who do like reaction videos. I don't do a whole lot of reaction videos. One of the only reaction videos I've ever done is actually a reaction video to an Islamic YouTube channel. And I actually had a really good response, but also that video only has, I think, like 60 something views. So all the people who saw it were other atheists. But I have gotten both like, I've been threatened by Muslims and I've had Muslims come up to me and try to understand me. And like, I mean this from like a place of good faith. I run a Facebook page called The Hispanic Atheist. And there was one time these Muslims from Indonesia who were students, they messaged me and they were just like, hey, we're Muslims, but we're students. And we really like, we have an assignment to learn about like another religion. We know atheism isn't a religion, but for the purpose of this assignment, it'll count. And we were wondering if we could like have a conversation with you. And I was like, heck yeah. Cause like, that's the sort of thing I really like doing. That's part of the reason I'm
That's
not
so
like
cool.
Yeah, I really liked it. They were really nice. I think that part of it is also like I understand, I know a little bit of Indonesian and I like know about Indonesian culture and like how it is that Indonesia talks about religion. So it was a very interesting experience for me because I have a few friends who are Indonesian, which is part of the reason I can speak like the basics. And I had a whole lot of fun with that. But like a lot of my other friends who are like bigger YouTubers always, they're not like worried about it, but like every time they make a video about Islam, they're just like, I don't know how this is gonna go. There's always like a big question mark there.
Oh, well, I guess I'm just fearless because that's the only thing I ever talk about.
I mean, I think it's different for you because like a whole bunch of us, a lot of the people I'm thinking of are people who were either like secular from birth or people who were like raised Christian and then deconverted. So obviously like, and that's the way I was. Like I was raised casual Catholic and non-denominational. So for me, like Christianity is the religion of my birth, which is part of the reason I don't talk a whole lot about like Islam. If I knew more about it, I think I probably would more.
Yeah, I've noticed that some people are not that they're afraid to talk about it, but they're hesitant to talk about it because they feel like they don't know enough about it. I mean, I think it's okay for anyone to talk about whatever topic they want, and if they, make a mistake or they're uninformed about something, then they can just easily be corrected, and that's fine. I guess that's also the reason I don't talk too much about Christianity because I'll admit that I don't have a background in that. So it's not my forte. I'll just stick to the basic things that are obvious and everyone knows about. But honestly, when it comes to Islam, no matter how much you know, you will still get accused of not knowing anything about it. Because I get that all the time. I get like, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know enough Arabic to speak on the subject. You don't know enough, exegesis to speak on the subject. It's so funny to me, actually. No matter, even if you go overseas and you study for 10 years and you like speak the language, they're still gonna claim that you don't know what you're talking about. So honestly, I just ignore that because they're always gonna say that.
I think that that's like a thing that makes a whole lot of sense. And it's definitely not just like, not that thing itself, but like that fear of that reaction. I also think that like there's the same thing with Christianity. Like one of the biggest responses to like bad Christians, like making bad Christian videos online and the atheists who respond to them from like Christians is like, oh, that's not true Christianity. And it's always funny how true Christianity seems to be like a thing that always changes. It's almost like
It's so elusive. It's just like true Islam.
it's almost like, and this is going to be a really controversial idea, but maybe what is true Christianity is subjective.
Yeah.
So edgy over here on Luciano's Logic.
Yeah. What's funny, Mr. I don't know if you know him. He's pretty popular. Imam Tawhidi at the Imam of Peace. I don't follow him, but I occasionally see things that he posts, and he just had a fatwa issued against him by a mufti in Pakistan. And I think this is because he had been one of the people who was getting those emails from Twitter that his posts violate some law in Pakistan. Have you seen this? It's like a whole bunch of people are getting accused of like violating some law in Pakistan and being told by Twitter, not explicitly like, hey, delete your stuff and comply with the law in Pakistan, but it's like a weird warning, like if you don't know what's gonna happen if you don't delete your stuff. And what I feel like is, why is Twitter even entertaining this? Pakistani's pressure is like, threatening them, we're gonna block Twitter. Okay, so block it, problem solved. Like, what's the big deal? Twitter is like so terrified of being blocked by Pakistan.
Okay, so like with that, the one person whose content I saw this happen to was Emperor Atheist. And part of the reason I saw it was actually because like I follow you, so I see like your tweets and I saw that you retweeted it. But also like I heard about it a few days later and I actually got to see the video that like the thing was talking about, like the copyright strike. And the thing that's weird with Twitter is that like Twitter is kind of like notorious for this because there are other places where Twitter has just sort of like followed these nonsensical laws, and instead of like doing the logical thing and being like, hey, we're going to protect our users, they're deciding to protect the feelings of a government, which objectively doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. Because it's like if you bend for one thing, then you're going to just keep on bending for other things. So basically they're going to be, like bending to the whim, like every whim of the Pakistani government or the laws or whoever it is that's going around reporting these tweets.
It's honestly like the strangest thing for Twitter to just, I agree with people who are just like, why is Twitter entertaining this? Like you would think that like the users that they have, especially in some cases, users who have like tens of thousands of followers would matter more than the feelings of a government, especially because like just because a government feels some way doesn't mean that the rest of the country feels that way.
Ope just commented in the chat and he said, it's not just Twitter. He received email from YouTube telling him the same thing about a video he made. Yeah, they're doing the same thing on YouTube. It's like Pakistan is trying to control these media outlets and censor them somehow, censor the internet. And there was that one that I don't know if you saw. I retweeted the I don't remember where he was from. I'm not gonna say a country, but he was this ex-Muslim and that spoke Arabic, that been to Arabic speaking countries, and he showed how Google shows biased search results in English versus in Arabic, or if you switch the country of like the Google country, the browser like shows different results. And I think it's so funny and ironic to me when I guess you could say Western Muslims or moderate Muslims or however you want to call them, people who don't know Arabic and who haven't studied it in depth, truly studied the Quran and Hadith in depth, who make all of these apologetics for it, that it's the religion of peace and that ISIS are not true Muslims and they're not following the real Islam and all that stuff. And not just ISIS, but like other groups as well that we would call extreme or terroristic or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I'm not allowed to talk on it because you think I don't know enough Arabic to speak on it. You don't have to know enough Arabic to convert to it. Like you actually don't really need to know any Arabic to convert to it. Mosques will just accept any convert, right? But if the people who are living in these countries who speak Arabic as their native language are speaking out, and the only reason that they can't, be vocal is because they're afraid of being, imprisoned or killed or worse, and they see it exactly for what it is, and their search results are not, is Islam a religion of peace? It's like, is Islam a terrorist religion? Or like just straight to the point, because they know there's no sugarcoating it over there.
It's definitely interesting, like learning about the different experiences of people from different places, especially places that speak different languages. Because I was raised in Latin America, and Spanish is my first language. I'm better at English now than I am at Spanish, but like when I lived in Latin America as a kid, I would say that I was equal. And I went to Christian churches in Latin America, and that's definitely like that's probably the biggest thing that's different like between American Christianity and Latin American Christianity, especially now, because like when I was younger, there used to be more differences, but like now, for like usually for the worse, American Christianity and like Latin American Christianity have gotten a lot similar, and it's really sad seeing stuff like that, and it's really frustrating, especially because like on YouTube there aren't that many Hispanic atheists, and
Yeah.
that's understandable, but it's like really frustrating, especially because as people know, I make videos in Spanish, and I really like making videos in Spanish, but I get nervous about uploading them because it's just like my Spanish isn't perfect, so I wonder if the mistakes I make are going to render it unintelligible.
I don't think so. Like, that shouldn't be an issue. It's just about getting exposure, you know. I was talking about this before, because actually if you go on, I don't know, Facebook and other things and other platforms, and you look at the Spanish speaking atheist groups, like they have a ton of members, like, you know, thousands, over like tens of thousands. I don't even know how many, but there are a lot. I just think that they are also less vocal, because the atmosphere over there is so overwhelmingly religious. This is, I mean, obviously I haven't been there myself, but this is the impression that I get from news and watching different clips, and even the TV shows and movies that come out of Latin America. They're so overwhelmingly religious. It's just like pumped in. It's it's like Jesus and Mary and the Virgin of Guadalupe. It's, you can't escape it. It's everywhere. Like, I just went to a Mexican restaurant the other day, and it was like the Virgin and nativity scenes and just everywhere. And it's within the language. It's within the it's just assumed that everyone is like Catholic, or at least Christian, but overwhelmingly Catholic. And it's as if that's supposed to be the default. So one of my favorite one of my favorite telenovelas is Teresa. And, well, basically no spoilers, but there's the main character has to deal with a death, and like of someone really close to her, and she's grieving, and I guess she's in like the hospital chapel, and wait, this is completely irrelevant actually, but it's just funny to me how it's really irrelevant to the entire story arc as a whole, but they wanted to establish early on that how much of a bad person she was. And so when her, you know, family member died, and she goes to the chapel, and she sees her mom praying, and she just gets angry, and she's like, why are you asking God for anything? He didn't help us. He didn't save, you know, our our family member. Like, there's, you know, she just started like cursing God, and her mom was so shocked, and she was like, oh, you can't curse God. Like, what are you doing? And it was this moment. It was you know, obviously overdramatic, as always, overdramatic moment, where I think the whole purpose of that moment was to show what a bad person she was, that she would cross the line and curse God. And then, of course, right after, she took it back, and she was like, no, I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. But it set the stage, I think, for the whole entire rest of the show, which is 152 episodes of of her being this like, you know, evil person without morals, without a sense of good at all.
I always forget how long the traditional telenovelas are because like the main ones I watch are like narco novellas, which is weird because like I kind of like principally I'm against narco novellas because oftentimes they like glorify the criminal lifestyle, and like that's a weirdly puritanical idea for me to have, but it's just like living in Latin America and like seeing like the reality of a lot of these sorts of things. It's so weird to me that like there's so much TV that shows like criminals living like these like massively gangster lifestyles and like making them look really cool. But there's one I watched that was only 70 episodes, and it was called Dandy. And there's the character, like they talk about religion from time to time, but something that really infuriated me is in Narcos Mexico, which is in English.
The Mexican, the Netflix one.
Yeah, the new one.
Yeah.
They have a character who's an atheist in the show who's based off of a real person who is not an atheist in real life. And that's the weirdest thing. And like, it's not like it's a good guy because then I would be annoyed, but it wouldn't be a reason to complain. It was a drug lord who is just like in the show canonically an atheist. In one of the last episodes of season 1, this is a minor spoiler, but I'm not going to reveal like the exact context. So if you want to watch it, you'll still be able to watch it. He's confronting a character who did a thing to a family member of his, and he asks him, he's like, "Hey, do you believe in God?" And then the guy is like, "No, I don't." I'm like, he's like super scared because he knows he's gonna die. And then the guy is just like, "I don't either." And it's just like, and then like he walks away.
Oh my God.
It's like he's gonna forgive him, but then he like orders one of his minions to go and shoot him. And it's like, "Yeah, this person who did this thing to me can't be allowed to live. I'll forgive him, but that doesn't mean he's gonna survive." And like there was no reason to pretend that this person was an atheist in real life. This person is still alive. Like the actual person that the character is based off of is still alive today and has never at any point in his life, in English or in Spanish, like given people any reason to believe that he's an atheist. I know.
Okay.
I Googled it.
So the actual person it's based on, I thought you meant the actor
I don't know about the
Christian. Actor. Okay. So they based the character and they changed the character and made him atheist in the show for like no real reason.
Yeah, like I Googled it out of curiosity because I was just like, yeah, if he's
maybe
an atheist,
they did it to make him seem more evil.
I think that's it, but like I don't want to accuse Netflix of like doing that. But I did send a tweet a couple of weeks ago. I was like, "Hey, Netflix, fuck, like, what are you doing?"
I don't know. They do a lot of weird stuff though.
One of their most popular like original shows that's like based off of a Latin American family has a character who's agnostic, and she's super cool. One Day at a Time has a character named Penelope Alvarez, and they're based off of like a Cuban family, but most of the actors are Puerto Rican or Colombian. And like the actual actress who plays the character is Puerto Rican, although the character is Cuban. And there's this whole episode in season 1 that's devoted to talking about religion. It's really neat. It's one of like the most interesting depictions of religion in like Latin America on TV. And of course they do that stupid thing that they do at the end where like the character who's a non-theist just prays with the mom and like gives the mom the win. Although in this case, it's like the characters Penelope Alvarez and Abuela, so it's not like the mom, it's the grandmother. But that's a really common thing that will happen a lot when characters are like non-theists on TV. There'll be this whole dramatic ass plot line where they're talking about like their non-belief and they're being like, "Yo, it's okay for you to not be a non-believer or for you to like not be a theist." And then like at the end, the character's like, "Oh, I'll go to church with you," instead of like the character who is a theist being like, "Hey, if you don't want to come to church, don't. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable or anything."
Yeah, that would have been better. But of course they have to have this weird sentimental moment where I mean I feel like it's realistic because that does happen where I guess kids go along with their parents' whims just to make them feel better. Like, you know, whatever, I'll pray for you, but I'm just doing it for show. I'm not doing it because I believe it, because it's so incredibly fake. And then the parents like, I'm so happy you're praying, even though it's a completely empty prayer. That means nothing because you don't actually feel that way, and so it's not going to get accepted by the mythical Sky Lord. But you know, you're doing it to please me, so that's cool. I guess I don't know. I don't think that Netflix, you know, as a corporation, is inherently has any religious agenda, because I watched Insatiable, and it's not really a spoiler, but there's like an episode with a pageant, and there's this huge this whole musical scene where they're doing the show, and the pageant's supposed to be religiously funded by a church or something. It's called like Little Miss Jesus, you know. You have to prove that you're the Jesusiest chick to win the pageant, and they do a song that's like, I love you, Jesus, I want to feel you inside of me. it's so blasphemous. I was watching it and I was like, really? This got backlash for fat shaming, and it didn't get backlash for this.
I mean, I feel like that's a positive sign, the fact that no one really cared about that, and they're just like, yeah.
I think it's because no one noticed it, because it wasn't in the trailer.
Well,
Because
like,
if it would have been in the trailer, it would have gotten backlash. The most backlash that Insatiable got was because of stuff that was in the trailer, and not because people had actually watched the show and felt some type of way about it.
Well, like, in slight defense of Netflix, because I also don't think they have a religious agenda. I think that they just like sort of cater to whatever audience they think is going to be most likely to watch the show. An example of this is Netflix's like new Sabrina show. I am a huge fan of the Sabrina show. If you like fantasy, if you like urban fantasy, like Harry Potter, but like more modern and also way darker, then it's a really good show. But like, the thing about it that's really weird is that it's a hella satanic in the way that our people think of satanic. Like, not like Temple of Satan or Church of Satan satanic. So like, I think the more accurate term would probably be like Luciferian. It's very theistic, Satan worshipy. And it's funny because like the main character herself, Sabrina, this isn't really a spoiler, by the way. You'll be able to watch this and you'll be able to tell. She's not fully on board with the whole like religion-y aspect of witchcraft and stuff. But like everyone else in her circle, especially like her aunt and uncle, are very into like the idea of Satan as like a dark daddy.
Oh, goodness. I guess I have to watch it now.
You really should. It's so good. The Christmas special came out on Friday, and I'm so excited for season 2. I am ready for season 2.
I guess we're going to watch that next. And we'll have like a atheist review Netflix originals podcast.
I'm actually writing a review of it right now.
Oh,
so
snap.
Yeah, because like it's very humanistic. Like, if you ignore, especially Sabrina as a character, a lot of like what she does and a lot of who she is very like overtly humanistic. But it's funny to think of like humanism in a theistic context, because humanism doesn't actually require you to be a secular person. Like, you can be a theistic humanist, and it kind of does humanism a disservice to pretend that all humanists are secular folks, although there are definitely advantages to that being like the most modern like idea of humanism.
I agree. That makes sense.
But
okay, so I guess moving on, you've kind of given an idea of what your experiences were like, you know, being an ex-Catholic, in your household. I guess like, how old were you when you had that conversation with your mom?
So I'm 24 now, and I was 18 when I had that. No, I was 19 when I had that conversation.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty young. You said earlier that you were going to tell me about like your Christian school experience. Was there something particular? Because I swear I know that like that's something you're gonna say is gonna be in common with with my experience, because I went I went like I was pretty old. I was like a teenager, but my younger siblings were very young. You know, I had I guess they were like in third grade or fourth grade, and one in sixth grade. And so they were like really young, and they had that kind of little kid experience with it. So it was kind of nostalgic for them and fun. And there's like kind of a big age gap there with me being much a bit older. So I had the not so fun experience. But go ahead, because you said six, so your age would have been about the same as my little brother.
So yeah, I went to a Christian school. I went to Fayetteville Christian School in Fayetteville, North Carolina,
Mm.
from sixth grade to seventh grade, and then I left to go to a public school for the first time in like almost 7 years when I went to the eighth grade. But it was a very interesting experience for me because that was my first real time being with like religious people outside of my family. And like the most religious people that I saw on a regular basis before that were my mom and dad, who are both theists, but different like kinds of theists. They're both Christians, but they have very different attitudes towards Christianity.
But the same like
And
denomination.
yeah, like my dad was more non-denominational, and my mom was raised in a bunch of different churches in Puerto Rico, but generally they were Pentecostal churches.
Mm.
And they met. They're both in the military, and they're both Puerto Rican. Although my mom left when I was born, but the best school for me to go to middle school in when I left Colombia, which is where I was living before I went to the Christian school, was a private Christian school. It wasn't like a public one because all the public middle schools where I lived were like really bad. So my mom's like, yeah, we're going to send you to Fayetteville Christian School. And I was kind of nervous about that because like I was a Christian, but everyone else there was like super Christian. And like I wasn't around non-theists, not even like non-Christians. So when I lived in that school, like when I went to Fayetteville Christian School in the sixth and seventh grade, all I was surrounded by religious people saying religious things and like thinking religiously. And that really does you a disservice in a whole bunch of different ways, but especially when you suddenly go from that to a public school. I learned about like, not, I wasn't a flat earth Christian, but I was like a young earth creationist. I was
Mm.
homophobic. And like all of those things were not things that my family taught me. Those were things that the school taught me. So
Mm.
when I went from that to a public middle school in the eighth grade, there was a huge culture shock. And I learned very quickly that I was wrong about a lot.
You said you lived. Was this a boarding school?
No, but like since my mom and dad were also Christian, like they never asked me a huge amount of stuff about like what I was learning, but they'd be like, "Yeah, tell us little stories about like your day." And I didn't say anything crazy because like to me, like the funniest stuff that I learned was usually like, "Yeah, I was in history class and I learned about like the Pilgrims today." So my mom and dad didn't really learn like the full craziness that I would learn at that school until I was like in the 11th grade. And like that was because I was just like, yeah, a lot of what I learned at FCS was wrong, and I kind of want to talk to someone about that because when I was in the 11th grade, I was living in Honduras, and I was going to another school that I would say was probably at least a little bit religious, but it definitely wasn't as religious. And like Latin American Christianity is a lot more pragmatic than like Southern Christianity. Like young earth creationism, to illustrate this, young earth creationism, which is not hugely popular in the South, but is definitely like not uncommon, is fairly popular in the South. And in Latin America, no one is a young earth creationist. Like
Oh wow.
at all. Like if you find young earth creationists, you're probably going to find them in like a handful of like really rural villages. You're not going to find them in like cities. You're not even going to find them in most towns. And like when I talked about like my beliefs about like evolution and stuff, my friends who were all like Catholics, and they were serious Catholics too, like they went to mass, they were learning the sacraments, they were in it. They were laughing at me. They're just like, yeah, no, That's not correct, my friend.
That's so weird. I guess I had like an kind of, I don't know if you could say a similar experience. I did have certain things that like my parents taught me before I went to Islamic school, and then once I went, it's like you said, your parents don't really know every single thing that you're learning at school. Um, and a lot of times they can't know. But they should have known because my mom was actually a teacher at that school,
Ooh.
and my stepdad was also a teacher at that school. So so my mom and stepdad were both teachers, and so they should have at least been a bit more aware of what was going on and what was being taught. But I guess you could say they were pretty oblivious. Um, Even when they kind of heard the craziness that was being said, they didn't specifically come in and say like, no, we don't believe that. I don't agree with that. They just kind of went with the flow and let anything be said and not correct it or say that they had a difference of opinion, you know. Um I there was there were a couple of Quran and Arabic teachers who were what we would consider kind of on the extreme side of the spectrum. So they would say silly things like the color pink is haram. Girls, you know, should
What?
not wear the color pink. You shouldn't come to school with a pink hijab because it's going to be seductive to the other young boys in class, because it wasn't a surprisingly, it wasn't a gender segregated school, which, you know, you would think that it would be. And I think the only reason they didn't do that was, you know, for money. Because if they turned away certain students, then they'd be turning away tuition because it was like a paid school. I think that's the only reason they had everyone together. But what was it? She said pink is haram, and also I think she said jeans are haram. And I was like, ooh, I can't wait to read that hadith.
Jeans. So
And
like the jeans one actually kind of makes sense because like I can understand. I don't agree with it. Obviously, it's a really dumb idea, but like I can sort of understand the sort of like logic that would lead someone if they had, at the very least, what I understand of Islam, if they had like that mindset to be like, this should not be allowed.
yeah. And what really got me, so the same teacher that said those particular things, what really got me one day, and I just like my jaw dropped. This was funny. So the building that that they had the school in had been repurposed, and originally it was either a church or a Christian school before it was bought and converted into an Islamic school. So in the big hall where they made their prayers, there was like a pulpit with a big microphone where I guess you could call the prayer and all that stuff, but there was like a stage kind of, and behind it there was this shadowy, you know, closed off area, and there was like this big, you know, freaking looked like a bathtub, and I was like, why is there a bathtub back here? Well, you know, it was a baptism tub. And I was like, oh, it seriously really did used to be like a church or something. Um, and and one day I guess the students were making these like handmade, um, not flat, like a banners. Yeah, banners to put up. And I guess they were having like some type of event. And we would do this sometimes where people like non-Muslims would just come in so that they could see that we were, you know, that we were just normal kids, and you know, we weren't terrorists, and we were nice kids, and we're inclusive, and we're just, you know, learning, and we're in our culture, whatever. I don't know what the purpose of the event was. It was just to like bring people in so they could see us. And and one of the banners said the word future. I can't get over it. Said the word future scholars. And this little girl was drawing it with her markers, and she was writing big bubbly words that said future. And the teacher came over, and she was looking at the word future really hard, and she was looking at the T in the word future, and she said, "You need to change this T, make it look less like a cross because we don't want them to think we're Christian." I was like, why would anyone possibly think we're Christian? And
that is
also,
comically extra.
yes, it was so extra because she wanted her to change the T so it looked like a plus sign. So it didn't so it didn't look like an actual T. Like, oh, let's change the lowercase t. Let's change the entire English alphabet so that we don't come even remotely close to blaspheming. And I was like, actually, it's so ironic because the whole purpose of the event was to show that we're not extreme, and then you say something like that.
Honestly, I kind of love it. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I was like, from that moment, I was like, I'm done with her. Like, I don't know, she needs to go back home, not home to her country, but like, she shouldn't be teaching anyone.
So I wanted to tell listeners a story about my own childhood, because in the interview that you did with Wonder Lady when you were chatting with her a couple weeks ago, you said something that I related to so harshly, and I mentioned this like privately before we started like broadcasting. But when I was younger, I was often asked to lie, not to lie, but to like keep secrets for family members, and family members learned very quickly that that was a bad idea, because I was a firm believer in both like Catholicism and in casual Christianity, and both of those are just like, yeah, lying is a sin. So, and a lie of omission is also a lie, which is the idea that like if you lie by not having, like if you lie by omitting details instead of telling someone something that's false, that's still a lie. It's a thought crime. It's like the intention that matters. And an example that I can think of is one time I was asked to pick up the phone and to tell someone that my mom wasn't there. And I did it in a really specific way, in a really dumb way. And this
she told me to tell you she's not here.
No, it wasn't even me lying. It was me just being a dumbass. Like I looked at my mom after like the person asked like, "Hey, is your mom home?" I looked at my mom and I was like, "Hey, are you home?" That's me being honest. I was asking a question, but then like my mom told me to just hang up the phone. And the reason why I mention this is that in Wonder Lady's original interview with Lily, there's a point pretty like, I think it's like almost an hour in, where they're just sort of telling stories about their childhood. And she said the exact same thing. And I noticed that this is like a really common thing. If you were raised in one of these religions and you're told to lie, it just sort of confuses you.
Yeah, because, well, in Islam, it's pretty straightforward. You're supposed to obey your parents unless they ask you to do something, haram, forbidden, or something that's a sin, or something that's against Islam. So that's the hierarchy. They can ask you to do whatever, but you can just be like, sorry, I'm not allowed to listen to you. So there was something pretty specific. I guess I won't go into detail, but there was something pretty specific that it wasn't even that she told me to keep a secret. She didn't tell me to keep a secret or lie or anything. She just assumed that I wasn't going to say anything about it. So I was just honest, and I said like, yeah, this is what happened. And then she got so mad. She was so mad that I was like, open about something that should have been not a secret, And I just thought it was funny because I was like, oh yeah, you want me to lie? That's not gonna happen. And here's the thing about lying. As a child, I think I never thought that lying really qualified to be considered a sin. I mean, obviously, I still don't think that it should be considered a sin because in some cases, obviously, it can hurt people, but it's such a general thing that sometimes it can be beneficial and not help, but sometimes it's necessary to lie, right? And teaching your kids not to lie is a good moral to teach them, but not to teach them that it's a sin and they're going to go to hell for it or something like that. I think that's, a bit extreme. The thing that I think a lot of parents don't know is that lying is actually, especially lying at a young age, like I don't know, 2 or 3 years old, is a sign of like cognitive development, and it's a, I want to say like it's a good thing, but it's kind of a good thing. It's a good thing to know that your kid has the ability to lie, or that they figured out lying, because that means that they're intelligent, because they figured out a tool that can potentially help them, even if, you know, most lies that a kid tells is going to be something obvious that you're going to know right away that they're lying about anyway, you know, most likely. But I mean, still, you should teach your kids not to lie, but I still don't think that it's um has the it should hold that weight to be considered a sin, right? Because you can lie about anything, about things that are you know, irrelevant.
The thing about like lying to me is that like I don't think I think that like people should be taught that like yeah, being honest probably 8 to 9 times out of 10 is definitely the move. It's definitely like the best thing to do. It's probably the safer option, but like we need to be willing to teach kids that just like hey, if someone is in danger, if someone is not if someone's going to get in trouble, but like if you see someone that's in danger and you're worried about them, it's okay to tell a lie if you think it's going to be something that's going to help them out, because it's to me it's kind of dangerous to be like yeah, a kid should always be honest. Like anything that's like a 100% absolute is probably like I'm always weary of absolutes. And I think it's partially because like as a Christian or as a non-Christian now, but like as someone who was raised Christian, like you'd always hear these like ridiculous things. Like the school I went to had a day where we talked about like whether or not we should have lied during the Holocaust. And that wasn't a thing that like anyone was supposed to do. It was a conversation we had. But like even then, like even when I was in that environment, I knew that the answer was just like, yeah, if we're in a country that's undergoing a genocide and someone's in danger and we can help protect them if we lie, we should probably do that.
Yeah, it's like common sense. It seems like it.
The thing that sucks though is that like I had friends and some of these people, like some of these students are still my friends. Like these aren't people I talk to very often, but these are still people that like I'm friends with on social media that I can send a message to if like they're worried about something. Like they were just like, yeah, we shouldn't lie, even if it would save someone's life. And it's like, whoa,
Mm.
you might want to slow your roll there, my friend.
Yeah, it makes you it's something that should make you like reconsider where you're getting your morals from. uh I think it makes some people reconsider, but
That
well, it's
I'm
like you
sorry.
said, you know, moral absolutes are something to be wary of, because crap. I I just lost my train of thought.
I
Okay.
wanted to talk to you, and this is something I thought about saying privately, but it's not like a big deal anymore. When I was a little kid, and the reason I mentioned this is that you talked with Wonder Lady about like these nightmares you had,
Oh yeah.
and I know that like that was something that was probably a little bit harder for her to relate to as someone who was raised like secularly or without like religion. For me, I did have nightmares like that. And I can remember one really specific one that like it scarred me up until and right after I became an atheist. I had a dream where God told me I had 3 days to live. And
Oh.
that's actually a story I've never told online, but it was a very distinct dream. I was in like the most common Christian conception of heaven, and like God was talking to me and he was just like, yeah, you have 3 days left to live. And I don't know if I've ever even told my family that, but I remember it so distinctly because the next day I was freaking out. And I was in the Christian school, so I went to talk to my principal, who was a very nice lady. She's probably one of the nicest people I've ever met. But I was just like, yeah, I need to talk to you about this dream I had, because honestly, it's like the scariest thing I've ever had. And I told it to her, and she's like, Satan is doing that to you. Either that or there's something else going on, but it's not a dream that you should take seriously. And that was like a really reassuring answer, especially because I have friends who've had similar stories and the answers they got were not really reassuring. But I just wanted you to know that, and also anyone who's listening, that if you had those sorts of dreams, you aren't alone, because that's something that happened to a lot of people that I know, including some people who are like still believers now.
Oh wow, that's crazy. I would have been freaked out too. I would put my nightmares into two categories. One was about jinns or dreams that I thought were caused by jinns, you know, sometimes involving sleep paralysis, and the other category is like Armageddon, the end of the world, like full blown, you know, the day of judgment, so to speak. Because there's a lot of that talk in hadith and in the Quran itself. Actually, it's just, it's everywhere. You can't avoid it. Like they talk about it so much and in such detail. These predictions of like what it's going to be like and all this stuff. And I was inundated by these images. So of course, and one of the things one of the things about the last day, or whatever they call it, is that no one knows when it's going to be, so it could be any time. Like this is a constant concept that is like retold and reassured to us over and over, that like no matter what time in what period in history you are, like you just never know. It could be tomorrow. Like they say that all the time. You never know. So I was scared. I was like, okay, I, you know, don't want to be around for that. The way that they described it was absolutely terrible. You know, earthquakes and all the buildings are falling down, and you just, everyone is dying just everywhere, and there's tornadoes and tsunamis, and just everyone in the entire world is dying. I was like, no, I don't want to see that. So I used to have nightmares about like what is it, tornadoes. Like I had dreams where I would look out of my window and I would see a funnel cloud. And I think I had tornado dreams a lot, because I don't know why. I thought that's what was gonna happen. Like a tornado was just gonna come for me. Or other like natural disasters were gonna happen, and that was gonna be the end of the world. And you know, I think one of the problems with this is that, imagine like you're in a natural disaster, and you already think that the end of the world is going to happen at some point. So if you're in a natural disaster and that's happening to you at the moment, you don't know what's going on in the rest of the world. In your mind, you're like, this is it. It's the end of the world. This is the last day. It's over. Like, there's an earthquake. This building is falling down right next to me. It's happening. That's it. It's not a drill. This is the end of the world right now. So that's like what my thought process would have been if I had gotten caught in a disaster when I was that age and in that mindset. I would have just thought that it was the end of the world. And I don't, it's so scary.
It really is. Like, so with Christians, there are some sects of Christianity that like almost fetishize like the end of days. It's really interesting. And like I don't know the differences between like the Islamic end of days and the Christian end of days. I think that'd be like a really neat subject for a live stream. And in the future, one live stream that I'm going to do probably before the end of the year is gonna be like a live stream where folks who went to Christian schools like get together and like sort of talk about their experiences, because I don't often realize just how rare that is. Like going to Christian schools, at the very least in the United States, and not just Christian schools, but also like Islamic schools and Jewish schools, people who went to like theistic private schools growing up. I want to have a live stream where like there's like maybe 4 or 5 of us and we talk for maybe 2 or so hours about like our experiences. I'd love for you to come on. This was a thing I was thinking about.
Oh, great. That'd be cool.
But this is a thing I was thinking about doing, but then like I always forget just how rare it is because most of the atheists I know, both like face to face living in DC and also like in the YouTube circle, a lot of us didn't go to private schools. A lot of us went to like public schools, whether it was here or in other places like in Puerto Rico or in the UK. Most of us were like secular kids who had theistic parents instead of being like religious kids who were raised in secular societies. And I think it's probably, I think it'd be good for us to like have a chat like that.
Yeah.
I forgot where I was
Also
going.
about like comparing the signs of the end times, because I'll say one thing, like in Islamic, I say folklore, there's so much, there's so many freaking predictions, and it's in such immense detail you probably wouldn't believe. um but the funny thing is that the way that it's the way that the predictions are set up, you should be able to tell, like, okay, if this were to actually happen, you know, we would be able to map it out. It'd be like, oh, well, Jesus has to come back first of all, and then there's going to be 40 years of only Muslims, and then there's going to be, because this is what we were told, right? So why would we think that the end, that the last day was like tomorrow? Jesus hasn't come back yet. And so that's the things that I told myself to reassure myself, since no one else was doing it. And I guess that's why I went out of my way to study, I guess, more than my brothers and sisters and stuff, because when I was afraid of something, I would go and study it to reassure myself, to try and like ease that fear. So that's kind of like the same thing that happened with my fear of jinn. Because I was afraid of them, I went and studied them. Unfortunately, that only increased my fear because there was no reassurance over there. but in general, if I was concerned about something or just like confused or whatever, I just went and studied it myself. Because a lot of times you ask your elders and they just don't give you a satisfactory answer. And I think that if I had been curious about different things, then I probably would have came to the conclusion a long time ago that that it wasn't true, and I probably would have been an atheist a long time ago. But that wasn't even something that I was willing to consider at the time, because I remember once, I think my friend asked me, she didn't say why. She said like, yeah, do you ever consider the possibility that God's not real and heaven or hell isn't real? And I didn't say, like, my answer was so interesting to me, especially looking back at it, because my answer to her wasn't like, yes, I know he's real. My answer was, I want him to be real, and I want heaven and hell to be real, because I can't consider the possibility that people who get away with crimes in this life don't have any divine justice that they have to deal with after they're dead. I just didn't want to accept that. And I actually said it that way. I said, I don't want that to be true. So I still considered myself a theist at the time, even though I said it in this way that sounds like maybe like a logical fallacy.
That's really interesting. I've never I know that this is a common argument that theists, especially monotheists, make, but like I've never actually heard someone who is no longer a theist say it. That's interesting to me. I think it would be neat. Like the purpose of this conversation, for anyone who's curious, was mostly to introduce folks to Lily and for us to just have like a fun little chat, because I think one of the things that frustrates me whenever I see ex-Muslims on live streams from people who aren't ex-Muslims is that usually people focus on like, oh, what was Islam like? Why did you leave? And that's an important conversation to have, but I also feel like that's kind of unfair to ex-Muslims who probably want to talk about like other stuff. So I didn't want to like have this be one of those conversations. And in like the sorts of live streams that I'm going to be doing with guests, I'm going to keep that up. I'm going to like do my best to let the guest talk about whatever they want to talk about. I don't want to like lead the conversation in a particular way, because I feel like having like super purpose driven live streams makes sense. But also there are people who can do it better than I can. And I think that like something that's fun is just letting people talk about whatever it is they want to talk about, instead of like, yeah, we have this that we're going to get to by the end of the conversation.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, it's okay to have like bullet points you want to at least go over.
Well, yeah, like, and I do, and we did, like, we talked about the three big ones, because like those were the things that I thought was just like, yeah, these are really neat things that are like at least worth mentioning, especially because like the whole Islamic school thing, that's a thing that I'd love to have like a grander conversation about in the future.
Yeah, same. I've been meaning for like months to have just one episode on my channel where I just talk about the school and that's it, because that school was so many problems. I can't even begin to talk about that freaking school. It was a mess. And I honestly believe that it should have been shut down. But of course it's not going to get shut down because, you know, the state is going to be afraid of being called Islamophobe. Just imagine the headlines. State shuts down, you know, Islamic school for no good reason, and it's not allowing us our freedom of religion.
Was that school in the United States?
Yeah, it was actually.
I'm not going to ask you like where, because I don't know. Like,
I'm just going to say yeah,
I actually didn't know that school was here. That's surprising.
Yeah. The reason that I think the school should have been shut down is because I don't think that it was, you know, up to code and up to, you know, state regulations for a lot of things. They didn't have any type of they barely ever did, like, I don't know, fire drills and any type of normal drills. They didn't have any security measures. They didn't have a school nurse. So there was, you know, if you got sick, I don't know where you went, to the secretary or the vice principal or something. They didn't have any safety measures. And by that, I mean, there was no metal detectors. There was no, I mean, a kid could bring a knife or a gun into school. They really could. And actually, this is so crazy. I actually brought a knife to school once. I didn't know it was a knife, in my defense. It was packaged up. But like, you know, you could just bring whatever. And if a kid from that school wanted to shoot up the school, it would have been really easy. And if a kid wanted to, like, I don't know, set the school on fire, I know that sounds really terrible. They probably could. And that's what I mean. They have no safety measures. They probably were concerned about people from outside, you know, attacking them, but they weren't worried about thinking about it from within. I don't think they had any what is it called? I guess schools don't usually have security cameras, but it would have been nice to have like a camera in the hallway or something, just in case something happened. And it was terrible. They really would have been screwed if there was a school shooter ever at that school. And a ton of other problems I can't even get into. And I don't think that they should have been open. And they required tuition from each student's parents, and they were really terrible about getting the tuition and accepting it. And the thing is that when certain students' parents didn't pay the tuition, instead of, you know, having a policy for that, because the students would just still come to school when their parents didn't pay tuition, they would shift the burden onto the other parents or onto the community. And so then they would start with the begging for donations from the community, from the mosque, and from the patrons, because it's like, these kids' tuition isn't paid. Now their parents didn't pay it, but, you know, now it's on you to pay it. Like, what? Okay. So that's not my kid, but I'm going to be worried about paying for their education so they can get a good, nice Islamic education and not have to go to the filthy, evil public school.
Public education is haram.
Yeah, it is. Oh my god. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. There was one thing I wanted to say, because I knew that, you know, we didn't really talk too much about like religion in Latin America. Did you see the video of the girl who went on the singing competition?
Yeah, the
Ecuadorian. Oh my gosh, every single I didn't know what country it was from.
It was Ecuador, yeah.
Oh, wow, because I just saw the clip. But every single one of those freaking judges, just like they were all judging her, but not on her singing.
On the wrong thing, yeah.
Like, you're a good singer, but, you know, why don't you believe in God? But it's just like, this is a singing competition, and they were extremely biased because they all downvoted her, and I don't think it had anything to do with her voice. That was
the good thing with that is I don't know if you pay attention to like Reason Rally or like any of like the major like organized events that happen in this country when it comes to like secularism. But that girl actually came to the United States in 2016 and she sang at Reason Rally. She sang with Penn Jillette. I'm totally
awesome.
yeah. I think that was not the name, but one of the organizers wrote a song dedicated to Christopher Hitchens, and they sang it together. So that was the thing that happened in like 2016. So it really sucks what happened to her. What happened to her is horrifying, and it was like televised. And not only that, it went really viral in the United States. It's the first thing I've seen that happened to a Hispanic atheist that went viral in the United States. That was like mind blowing for me, seeing like the coverage that it got. Yeah. And I'm really happy that she had like that vindication.
Because they really eviscerated her, like verbally. They were like really went in, like every single one of them. I was surprised not at least one of them was going to be like, maybe you should chill. And then the guy, so stop. Yeah, that was crazy. And there was other thing. Well, I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in a country in Central America, and we were talking about like, you know, the marriage practice over there and how it differs from over here, and like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is probably true. And he's an atheist, and I guess, you know, he lives in like a pretty religious household or whatever. And he said, I would never want to get married here because to get married you have to have your baptism certificate, and you have to have your first communion, and you have to prove that you're a patron of a specific church, and you have to be endorsed by a certain pastor. And he was like listing all these things that you need in order to get married. And I was like, is this to get legally married? Because that sounds like, it's actually not that surprising though, because there are some people who have talked about feeling like they were religiously discriminated against for not being able to for basically needing religious requirements in order to get married. I mean, anyone can go and go down to the courthouse and sign a paper and get married, right? But to have the big wedding ceremony, the one that people usually do, that gets officiated, a person officiating it is supposed to be a religious figure, right?
That's like, so it differs from country to country, but I do know that like there are individual states where in order to have a wedding that's like fully recognized, you need to have like religious backing. And that's really weird. I'm gonna have to see if I can find it, but I have a friend who got married in, I think, Costa Rica, who wrote about that experience. And I think that what he or she did was they like went through and they like figured out who are the people who do it the fastest, so that way they could have like a really speedy wedding, because they knew their partner and like they were ready to get married, but they didn't want to do like the whole process, and they were irreligious too. So it's like, yeah, we're not going to do this whole like session thing you have to do, because I know in the Catholic Church, especially if you want to have like a really fancy formal Catholic wedding, you have to like talk to a pastor, you have to go through this counseling sessions, you have to like make these appointments, and I don't know how many people still do that. I know it's possible to get a Catholic wedding if you live in like the right place without doing all of that, but if you want like the real formal wedding, it's this whole big process.
I think it's similar in Muslim weddings too. I mean, actually, in Muslim weddings, you basically just need the bride and the groom and 2 witnesses plus the person performing it. So it's strange because you you don't even have to. You were saying that you need to do sessions, but actually, you don't even have to have met the person the day before. You don't have to even prove that you've ever met or sat down and talked, which is like worse. But you kind of, I think depending on the age, as a woman, you need your father's permission to get married. And it's like his formal permission. I can't say from experience because I haven't had an Islamic wedding myself personally. And my dad wouldn't give permission anyway, even if I asked him to. He was like, hey, dad, can, I'm gonna marry this dude. He'd be so mad. He'd be like, what do you mean? You were supposed to ask my permission. I'm sorry. I'm not asking anyone's permission.
I think that makes sense. I know that like with a lot of Hispanics, both men and women, like obviously not everyone, because like obviously not everyone, because I'm not going to be asking my family's permission, and a lot of the Hispanic atheists I know aren't going to be asking their family's permission. But like it's definitely popular to have your family's permission. I would like to have my family's like backing when I get married.
Yeah, or blessing.
Like I think it would be nice if they knew the person I was marrying and they were just like, yeah, she's cool or he's cool, because I don't like. For me, dating isn't a thing based off of like genders.
Yeah,
so.
but I think what I mean is that in general, within our culture here in the U.S., it's kind of normal to ask, oh, I'm gonna go ask your dad for your hand, and it's an informal thing, so to see if he's cool with you and if you're gonna have a father-in-law who doesn't completely hate your guts, but it's not. He actually has the power to give you or grant you permission or deny you permission, because if he says no, then what is he going to do? He doesn't actually have that power, but sometimes he does.
I do think it's interesting when there are families where they do have that power, because like I know a handful of people, usually first generation kids. So like their families immigrated here and they were either born here or they were brought over when they were like really young, where they're just like, yeah, if my family doesn't back the wedding, we're going to elope. Like I don't know anyone who would actually like stop I don't know a single person, at the very least not a Hispanic or Latinx person, who would not get married just because their family said no.
Honestly, eloping sounds so appealing to me right now. This is the only way I would get married right now. Oh, goodness. He said he might. I don't know what they're talking about over there in the chat.
They're having like, I think it's funny that you're also in the chat. I'm watching it and I'm like reading the comments, but I do think it's funny how like they're basically having a different conversation.
Oh well. So anything else you want to go over?
I think I would love for you to come on to my channel again, especially when I do the live stream where I like a sort of private school live stream where people who had the same sort of nightmarish or maybe not so nightmarish experiences that we had in private school, because private school is really weird And I think that there should probably be folks who get together and be like, yeah, this is what we learned in private school. Don't send your kids to private school. It's probably not the best move.
Especially religious private school. And it's just the funniest thing how when you say private schools, kids who've never been there or people who've never been there have this idea of like, oh, you're super smart and you studied a lot, you know. Because then later when I went to college, I was in class one day when this guy just went on a rant about how he, you know, he went to public school and therefore he couldn't go straight to university. He had to stop at community college. But if he had gone to private school, you know, someone who goes to private school, they don't have to go to community college. They can just go to straight to university because they're smart and they're up to date on the material or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes it's the opposite. You might learn less in private school than what you would if you had gone to public school.
Oh, they're absolutely like, I have a feeling that when folks, especially folks in the United States, think of private school, they don't think of the same sort of schools you and I are talking about. I have a feeling that like they think of like academies, which are often secular. School. Yeah. We're talking about the private schools that we experience, which is, as you guys can tell, very different from the private schools that are like academies and stuff. But yeah, I really enjoyed having this chance to talk with you. For anyone who's curious, this is the first time that Lily and I are having like a one-on-one conversation, although she was in the after party. You were in the crazy after party that went down with Wonder Lady, the one where like if you check on YouTube right now, it's literally not up.
Oh, I didn't know that. She deleted it.
I don't know if she deleted it or
maybe
YouTube
she did
deleted
because
it.
It went silent for a second and she was embarrassed.
I actually didn't notice that, but I didn't notice that for like a couple of days, and then I decided to check out like the comments like yesterday, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go see if anyone commented on it, and then like it was just gone.
Okay. That's fine. Yeah, I think we should do another one, and I'm totally okay with having a more directed conversation where we talk about something in particular, and honestly, doesn't have to be religion. We can talk about politics.
Ooh, do you want, like, if anyone ever wants to have a politics thing, I feel like I'm one of the guys.
Do you know the what is it? The political compass quiz?
Is that I know of it. That's the one where it's like it divides you up into like 4 different quadrants, and then you're somewhere on the quadrant, right?
Take it so that we can compare our results.
Oh, that would be fun. So actually, Wonder Lady, when I was talking about a podcast that I'm planning with Anna, Wonder Lady actually thought that I was thinking of doing a podcast with you. I don't know if you like doing podcasts, but honestly, when I start doing my podcast, I would love for you to come on.
Oh, that's fine. What's your platform?
So right now I'm thinking of doing, right now I have like my weekly live streams, which I do every Monday, including this one, like this coming Monday, tomorrow. I am going to be doing that then, but I'm also doing like another podcast called The Thought Train, which is one that I'm doing with Anna. And
is it thought spelled THOT?
No. That so like we thought about doing that, and that's actually not a bad idea. I think that maybe if we ever do episodes talking about like sexuality, we'll probably call it that. Thought Train, be gone, thoughts.
So yeah, you're doing this podcast on where?
I'm doing, so right now it looks like we're going to be recording them on Ringer, and then we're going to be uploading them to YouTube at first. And we might, if we like them and if we decide to do them like seriously, we'll probably have like a website for them. But right now it's going to be like YouTube, but it's not going to be like a live stream. It's going
yeah, you can record it. You can record it in advance. I know there's some like apps and platforms where you can record your podcast and then it uploads to a bunch of different places.
Yeah, Squarespace actually has that. Like my personal website, I have using Squarespace, Luciano the writer, and I need to use that website more often than I do. Although I write like weekly posts, so I think that I do okay. But yeah, I'll send you more details with podcast stuff later.
I'll go on yours and you can go on mine.
If you ever have a thing where you're just like, yeah, Luciano would be a good person to talk to about this, especially if you don't want to do like a solo live stream, because solo live streams
They're
are like,
taxing. They can be boring.
it's not even that they're boring, it's that like it takes a lot of energy. Like I am not a high energy person. Anyone who watches my videos
Because I have
will
a
tell
couple of
you.
videos, right? I feel like this is a conversation for after we're offline.
Mhm.
I have a couple of videos on my channel, and if you look at my like live streams and stuff, I have a few where I'm talking by myself, but mostly it's with my friend because
Mhm.
it's just such a better dynamic to be able to bounce ideas off of and have
Yeah.
like two voices. But yeah, I guess, are we done here?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. I just want to say thanks everybody for coming on. Lily's information is in the description. You guys, if you are subscribed to me and you are not subscribed to her, you need to rectify that immediately because her channel's fantastic.
Oh.
We'll see you guys around. Do you want to say any final words, Lily, before we go?
Follow me on Twitter, follow him on Twitter.
Yeah.
And we'll have a nice big party in a couple days.
Yeah. We're going to talk about private schools, which is always fun. But yeah, peace out, everyone.